Would you step inside Ashmore Estates? From people being chased up the stairs by an unseen entity, a child whose life ended tragically but still wants to hold your hand, and other creepy unexplained experiences that have gone on for decades. Welcome back, dissectors, to another haunted location. Today we will delve into the murky waters of Ashmore Estates in Illinois, a property that started its life as a poorhouse and mental institution. But when it became apparent that people were being mistreated, it took longer than it should to be closed down. Now, all these years later, the tortured souls of some of these past residents are thought to linger on. Even though Ashmore Estates officially became known as such in 1957, its history began 100 years earlier, opening as Coles County Poor Farm in Loxer, Illinois. Originally taking care of the poor, handicapped and mentally ill, by 1870 the county purchased a new property in Ashmore that consisted of 260 acres of farmland as well as numerous rundown buildings. The first main building was a 38 by 58 feet wooden structure that was 2 stories high and had a small kitchen attached to it. Life was hard for these inmates, as they were often referred to. In the first few years of operation, about 250 people were sent here to live, and 32 of those died there. These poor souls were buried on the north end of the property in a county cemetery until a pauper cemetery was established, which is said to contain anywhere from 60 to 100 people, though it's unclear if all the graves are occupied by the residents of Ashmore Estates. And it wasn't long before the property was being used and abused, and living conditions inside started to deteriorate. By 1902, the Board of State Commissioners of Public Charities reported that people who were suffering from mental illness weren't being treated any differently than those seeking a warm bed and meal. They weren't given any real treatment and just left to roam freely, a practice that was common at the time apparently. Even though the review was appalling, it was still deemed as adequate living space until 1911, when the shit really hit the fan. The list of complaints this time around was truly terrible, with the review highlighting vermin crawling about in the walls, poor ventilation, and bugs and flies infesting the place so badly that food was contaminated. The floors were described as rough, and don't get me started on the almost non-existent sanitation for residents. But would you believe it took another 4 years for the state to start considering bids to replace the old building? By 1916, the new building was completed and offered greater comfort for those residing there, with modern amenities like plumbing, ventilation and sanitation measures having been put in place. The new facility also had better provisions for managing the more violent inmates, keeping the poor farm residents safer. But over time, the era of poor farms came to an end as poverty was addressed, as well as social security being established, which helped to keep people who were old and too tired to continue working out of the poorhouse. On top of this, women were gaining rights too. Women whose husbands had died and had young children to support were often villainised by society's expectations of women should stay at home, taking care of their children full time. Let's be real, it was not practical then, and it isn't to this day. Ladies got the chance to work and provide for their young ones, keeping many out of the poorhouse. And rightly so. By the 1950s, Coles County Poor Farm was sold off to Ashmore Estates Inc., who wanted to convert the property into a psychiatric hospital. Sadly, after just 5 years of being in operation, the facility was shut down due to debts, only to reopen again a year later by accepting overflow patients from state mental institutions. Over the years, the facility continued to take care of the mentally handicapped. But by 1986, after many of the large-scale mental institutions being closed down, there were no longer enough patients to keep Ashmore Estates open, and so it closed its doors in April of the same year. Since this time, there have been many people who have taken possession of the property and its grounds, but with very little luck. In 1998, Arthur Colclasia bought the property for $12,500 with hopes of converting it into a home for him and his family. Sadly, this fell through as people kept breaking in and vandalising the place. By 2006, it was sold to Scott Kelly, and due to the known problems with vandals, he moved into the building to keep them at bay, even offering overnight stays and a haunted house experience around Halloween to keep money flowing. But yet again, tragedy struck in January 2013 as a violent storm with wind speeds reported to be up to 100 miles an hour ripped the new roof off the building while also destroying other structures on the grounds. Today, Ashmore Estates is owned by Robin and Norma Terry, who have done everything they can to clean up the storm damage and improve the building's conditions inside and out. Now it has become a very popular location with paranormal groups like Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures, Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters, and it's easy to understand why. So what spirits haunt the Ashmore Estate? Well, with what we've discussed so far, it's easy to see why many spirits may have struggled to move on, feeling frustration and anger at the time of their deaths. Our first spirit is called Elva and is believed to be a little girl who lived in the poor farm with her mother in 1880. This poor child sadly burnt to death after a spark from a stove heater landed on her dress, engulfing her in flames. To this day, Elva is known for being a gentle spirit who loves to hold visitors' hands, or if she's not getting any attention, she'll gently tug on your clothing. A spirit who is known to frequently make themselves known at Ashmore Estates is that of Joe Bloxham. This poor man was walking back to the poor farm along the train tracks after working a hard day of labour as a groundskeeper. But as he wandered home, a train struck him from behind, severely injuring him. Now call it stubbornness or fear of dying where he was struck, Joe continued to limp home after the collision before finally dying from his injuries. His spirit is seen all around the property and grounds, even appearing to visitors clear enough that they can make out his facial features. For those of you brave enough to venture into the boiler room, be warned, the spirit here can get quite aggressive. It's thought that the ghost haunting here was an old boiler room worker, and he finds it very frustrating when people linger around his working space. He'll start to shove people who are hanging around too long. Could he also be the spirit who is known to chase people up the stairs and make loud thumping noises? Upstairs near the front of the building you'll find two female ghosts that are described as being good-natured. In life, it's thought they were mentally handicapped, with many visitors reading to them in the hopes of encouraging the ladies to manifest. In this room, people have heard disembodied voices and strange sounds thought to be them. So even though Ashmore Estates started out as a poor farm with many horrors having occurred there over the years, today it stands strong as a place to explore and discover its many dark secrets. And with the tours that can be experienced today, it's gained a reputation as one of the most real haunted locations in southern Illinois. Apparently, most people who visit Ashmore Estates will leave with some kind of unexplainable experience. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you have ever visited Ashmore Estates, please consider sharing your experiences with us. Until next time, my friends, stay safe out there.